Hello again, ladies and gents. Hello, hi, hello. We're going to do part two now on the logos. Sorry, and just to recap, we know about the logos from the ancient world. We know it was a pretty Greek concept, and we're going to find out more about how Greek and how old world kind of pagan it was. And we just want to tentatively begin asking questions about how the logos word, reason, order, and so on was encapsulated quite nicely by the addition of in the Gospels and so on, in the epistles of this concept to Jesus Christ. And notice how, there is a certain amount of conceptual boring going on, but that this gives us an input for where Christianity might have actually come from. And the early Christians, those of the Jerusalem sect, and the Christianity that I believe sprung from it, I think this is quite obvious, were incorporating new ideas from their converts, we can assume, to Christianity, many of them coming from the Greek world, obviously. And we notice that Philo gives an interesting series of appellations and words that denote Christ, essentially. And this is Christ before Christ. Philo didn't know, nor did he ever mention Jesus Christ, the person. He never wrote about him. He was interested in many different Jewish sects. He is completely silent on Jesus Christ, and he died perhaps 2 decades after. He was writing right at the time Jesus Christ lived, and he never mentions Jesus Christ. So just an interesting thing to think about. Now we're going to continue with the middle part of my writing here. Closer to home, in pagan Greece, circa 500 BC, Heraclitus mentions the Logos. He states, although this Logos is eternally valid, yet men are unable to understand it, not only before hearing it, but even after they have heard it for the first time, though all things come to pass in accordance with this Logos. So all things come to pass. This Alpha and Omega concept with this Logos. So this Logos exists in a sense outside time. Quoting again, men seem to be quite without any experience of it. My own method is to distinguish each thing according to its nature and to specify how it behaves. Other men, on the contrary, are forgetful and heedless in their waking moments of what is going on around and within them, as they are during sleep. We see overtones of a withinness of this word, of nature being imbued with this word, and of many men being quite unable to understand it. Quote. He talks of a word that pervades universal matter and its laws, and is within and without simultaneously. Where have we heard this before? This is a Christian concept. Heraclitus informs us that Logos appears as a universal law that binds together the cosmos, according to one fragment still with us we read. Again, we're quoting Heraclitus again. Heraclitus. Listening not to me, but to the Logos, it is wise to agree, homologein, that all things are one. He who hears not me, but the Logos will say, all is one. And again, interesting ideas, interesting concepts. Heraclitus, a massive influence on Stoic philosophers, in his many works took that everyday word, logos, word, speech, and shifted the perception of the philosophical landscape in Greece, a trend that was not born with him, as we shall find, but that had lasting implications into the world of the Hebrews and early Christians. After him, the concept became key in describing order, rationality, and its correlate with divinity, speaking forth into our world the order and harmony we perceive every day within nature. Indeed, the suffix logi, or whatever, from which we derive technical disciplines like biology, anthropology, and zoology, today have their origins in logos, as is also such for logic, praxeologic, etc. It is a word of core importance today when engaging in practically any field of the sciences. So science and order. This is beautiful, really, because we know, getting esoteric, Jesus Christ is far more than just a person. He is this order in the world. Through him, all things exist. Am I quoting Paul there? I think I might be. Ignatius, Bishop of Antioch, writes in his epistles to the Magnesians 8, in a similar refrain. Ignatius provides a bridge between the more patently ethereal terminology in the epistles and the Gospels. With the Gospels, he clearly refers to the Word above in a more celestial, non-human character. He does talk both of a flesh and spirit Christ, so both of flesh and of a spirit Christ, but it's not exactly sure what he means, though his knowledge of any specific information we hear in the Gospels is entirely lacking. And he was writing at around 110 CE, perhaps later. So he still doesn't know much about the historical Jesus. And it's not like he knows the Gospels, because we'd surely know more about the historical Jesus had they been written at this time. I don't think they were. He clearly links the Word with the Son, however, worth mentioning at this point. There is one God who has manifested himself by Jesus, his Son, who is his eternal Word, not proceeding forth from silence. There was not a time when he did not exist. So he's talking about Jesus never having not existed. There's this reference. In fact, the Church Fathers Clement of Alexandria and Origen spoke voluminously on the subject of the Logos and its coterminous nature with Christ. We will not examine their works too much here, but it was obvious that the Greek Logos was known to them as a concept that was co-present with the more mystical and celestial nature of Jesus. And they tried hard to explain the nature of this concept while still pitching Jesus in fleshy form. You see, there's an evolution happening here, and what I believe is happening is that Jesus is, or obviously was, much more etheric and celestial, but now you're getting the first clamorings of this historicizing taking place. It's clear in Clement of Alexandria's works that he had a keen understanding of the pre-Christian Logos and its relationship to the gospel Jesus. He states this along with another quote from the pseudo-historical Orpheus. It may be freely granted that the Greeks received some glimmers of the divine Logos. Some glimmers indeed. The term and its implications within natural philosophy, philosophical discourse, was well developed and meaningful. He then denotes Orpheus, saying, behold the Logos divine, tread well the narrow path of life and gaze on him, the world's great ruler, our immortal King. He's talking about Jesus, right? These early fathers of the Orthodox Church were well accustomed, it seems, to the word made flesh, but figuratively, in the manner in which Christ is dutifully and strikingly rendered in both mystical form, but also, as with so much of Paul's terminology, given perfect expression in these lines. This is instructions from Clement of Alexandria, and this is worth listening to here. Pay attention, it's important. But that man with whom the word dwells does not alter himself, does not get himself up, and has the form which is of the word. He is made like to God. He is beautiful. He does not ornament himself. He is beauty, the true beauty, for it is God. And that man becomes God, since God so wills. Heraclitus then rightfully said, "Men are gods and gods are men, for the Word himself is the manifest mystery, God in man and man in God." So we're even getting a bit Gnostic here. It's kind of Gnostic. And it's in the Church Fathers' discourses. They are acknowledging that there is this divine spark in man, and that spark is Jesus. They call it Jesus. But where is it? It's in the celestial realm. It is the Word itself made kind of manifest, maybe not in historical form, but in everything around us. Being the Alpha and Omega, being nature and beauty in itself. So the beauty, have I read this before? Yeah, the beauty of finding Christ is in oneself, living in the way of Christ, finding the most essential component of its true self in Christ, not ornamenting himself, living egoless, as so many other highly advanced spiritual practices attest, for their initiates progress into conscious mastery. There's a progression kind of into conscious mastery. This is the adept's reading of these kinds of passages. This, remember, is some very deep gnosis. This is the glory of the mystery among the Gentiles, which is Christ in you, Colossians 1:27. It's the same language used in 1 John 4:4. Little children, you are from God and have overcome them. For he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. All right. It's the wording we find here when Luke 17:21 tells us, "Neither shall they say, Lo here, or Lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you." And on. This type of language abounds in the New Testament. Clement reminds us again of this mystical attribution of the word. Here in his instruction, to early church members, and an image of the Word is the true man, that is, the mind in man, who on this account is said to have been created in the image of God, and is in his likeness, because through this his understanding heart he is made like the divine word or reason, and so reasonable. It's Exhortations, there's the source. And I'm going to read just one more paragraph, I think. Yes, for Clement, the Logos also denoted a realm somewhat outside time-space, but just as much a part of the cosmos and its ordering principles. The divine words in energetic, rhythmic form, planning and organizing the countless galaxies, mathematically, fractally. The ideas and thought forms emanating from God that organize creation itself through his breath, if you like, through speech, vibration, along with us humans, we would assume, who carry an element of the divine Logos in us also, having to be necessarily separate from God the Father. Logos represents the divine mediator, therefore. The total oneness of God denotes a separateness from creation because God could not be said to have parts. He's the divine one. He's the monad, right? But Logos can. Logos then manifests from the Father as a pre-existent rationality or reasonability, according to which the one God, Jehovah, or Adonai, the one God, created all things. And we have Adonai Elohim, and Elohim is a plural. It could be seen that Jews, in some respects, saw the Elohim, the many part of God, as this Jesus, but they never said that. It's just concept. This is a conceptual realm we're talking about. And indeed, all of those things can be rightfully termed the Alpha and Omega. And how fitting is it that the Word gives us the our A to Z's, our A to Z's, the beginning and the end, and everything in between. God's language, our alphabet. So in some respects, you can see Jesus as being the alphabet, the language of God that creates from the mouth of the big fat one dude, boss man up there in his ultimate heaven, As God spoke his creation into being, he used his Son to do the creating, at least in this wiser and older cosmology, still present in early Christianity. Exhortations uses phrases like before the morning star and the divine being of all things to refer to Logos for this reason. And I think I'm going to leave it there. There is a little bit more about Clement, but I'm going to leave it with you because this is quite long already, I think. But yeah, stay tuned because there's still some important stuff to go. This was a little longer than I'd hoped, but I hope you're enjoying that. So we have this concept of Logos, but it's far more lofty than just a human being. This is why Logos is obviously Jesus in the Gospels and in the epistles. I think Paul is sketchy on the actual word. I don't think he uses it, but you can see the parallel concepts are absolutely obvious. But the church fathers, and we're going to talk about origin as well in just in the third chapter. And you're going to see that the church fathers understood very well that the Logos could be used to talk about Christ. And obviously this didn't come along with the advent of Christianity. It was old and embedded in Greco-Roman thought. I'm going to leave you there. I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to see you soon. Take care. Much love, much wealth, much awesomeness. Rock and roll. Let's go.